As the year comes to a close, these are all 20 mistakes that ruined WWE in 2025. Because when the year started, it looked like 2025 was going to be one of the most memorable years in WWE history. You had Cena's retirement tour. You had names like Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Punk, Rollins, McIntyre, AJ Styles, and LA Knight on the roster. You had the Netflix deal, and it seemed like there was no way WWE would screw this up. But then, Triple H ended up fumbling once again. So without further ado, this is every stupid mistake that screwed WWE in 2025. Let's start at the start of the year with the absolute baffling booking of the Royal Rumble. The 2025's Men's Rumble should have been a layup. John Cena was in his retirement tour. CM Punk was finally healthy and over as hell. The story wrote itself. Instead, WWE had Jey Uso win the whole damn thing. Jey might be a solid mid-carder and gets the crowd yeeting, but having someone who was clearly not ready for the main event spot win when you had names like Cena, Punk, Reigns, Rollins, and even LA Knight in the picture, that's straight-up tone-deaf booking. The company took one of their most organically over stars and overexposed him to the point where a significant portion of the fanbase started groaning every time he appeared. And this brings us to the equally baffling decision on the women's side. If Jey Uso winning felt tone-deaf, Charlotte Flair winning the Women's Rumble was the perfect example of Triple H playing it safe once again. The women's division in 2025 was stacked with names like Chelsea Green, Bayley, Liv Morgan, Naomi, and other stars who had been grinding all year. Yet WWE defaulted back to the same old formula. To be fair, Charlotte's work in the latter half of 2025 with Alexa Bliss made her character more likable. But that came months after the Rumble decision already left a sour taste. Both Rumble winners set the stage for what would become a recurring theme of disappointment throughout the year. And nowhere was this more painful than with John Cena's retirement tour. John Cena's retirement announcement at Money in the Bank 2024 gave WWE a gift, an entire year to craft the perfect farewell for one of the biggest stars in company history. This should have been easy. Instead, WWE turned him heel at Elimination Chamber with absolutely no long-term plan. The initial moment was shocking, no question. But everything that followed was a complete mess. The heel run lasted from Elimination Chamber through SummerSlam, and during that stretch, WWE wasted precious months of Cena's final year. This should have been WWE's easiest booking assignment of the decade, and they completely botched it by having Cena wrestle in pointless tag matches and face Logan Paul. But speaking of botching easy assignments, the entire build to WrestleMania 41 was a complete dumpster fire. WWE had all the momentum on the road to WrestleMania following the buzz of Cena's heel turn. But instead of capitalizing on the momentum, the build for WrestleMania 41 felt completely hollow. When WrestleMania finally arrived, the show felt underwhelming from a creative standpoint. Sure, there were some good matches, but good matches aren't enough when the stories behind them are non-existent. And nowhere was this more evident than the Mania main event. Travis Scott's involvement in the WrestleMania 41 main event has to be one of the dumbest booking decisions Triple H has ever made. The main event of WrestleMania was reduced to a publicity stunt. WWE prioritized a few days of Twitter buzz over the integrity of their biggest show. This pattern of chasing short-term gratification over meaningful storytelling continued throughout the year, and it also gave us one of the most ridiculous character changes of 2025. When Seth Rollins turned heel and aligned with Heyman, fans expected the next evolution of the Architect into something more dangerous. Instead, Rollins turned into just another generic heel who cut the same promos every other heel in WWE cuts. Rollins as a heel lost the edge that made his previous heel runs memorable. He wasn't the Architect dismantling the Shield. He wasn't the cocky champion holding the company hostage. He was just a guy who was now a villain because WWE needed someone to face CM Punk. And this brings us to another character assassination that broke the heart of every wrestling fan. R-Truth has been one of WWE's most versatile performers for years. When WWE released him in 2025, the backlash was immediate. The company quickly reversed course and brought him back at Money in the Bank to one of the loudest pops of the year. And for a brief, shining moment, WWE had something special. Truth returned with a new edge, calling himself Ron Killings again and demanding to be taken seriously. Ron Killings cut his hair on live television, and the whole world was ready to see this new version of Truth. Instead, the storyline was abandoned almost instantly without any payoff. Within weeks, Truth went back to the comedy character. Everything that made the Ron Killings transformation special was erased as if it never happened. WWE took a performer who was ready to show his range, gave him one of the year's most memorable moments, then reduced him right back to where he started. But speaking of wasting momentum, few stories in 2025 were more frustrating than LA Knight's booking. LA Knight's trajectory in 2025 perfectly encapsulates everything wrong with Triple H's creative philosophy. Here's a guy who got himself over organically. The catchphrases were trending, the merchandise was flying off shelves, the crowd erupted every single time his music hit. All WWE had to do was strike while the iron was hot. Instead, they hesitated. They played it safe. They gave Knight mid-card feuds that went nowhere, stop-start pushes that killed his momentum, and losses in matches when it mattered. Throughout 2025, Knight was consistently positioned right on the brink of breaking through to the main event scene, only for WWE to pull back at the last second. But LA Knight isn't the only wrestler who's been a victim of Triple H's bipolar booking. Drew McIntyre came out of 2024 looking like an absolute star. His feud with CM Punk was legitimately the feud of the year, and coming out of that rivalry, he looked destined for the world title scene and a marquee match at WrestleMania 41. Rumors suggested McIntyre was going to face Roman Reigns at Mania, which would have been perfect given his history with the Bloodline. Instead, he got Damian Priest. And while Priest is talented, he's nowhere close to Roman Reigns. From there, McIntyre's booking in 2025 struggled to regain any momentum. He lost back-to-back matches to Cody Rhodes, and Drew went from being positioned as a main event player to feeling like he was floating in creative purgatory with no clear direction. But speaking of questionable creative choices, one particular match left everyone scratching their heads. Sometimes WWE makes a booking decision so baffling that you have to wonder if anyone actually thought it through. Gunther versus Pat McAfee is one of those decisions. The match itself was fine for what it was, but that's not the point. The point is that the match did nothing for Gunther's character and actually made him look weaker for struggling against a non-wrestler. If WWE wanted to give McAfee a match, fine, but it didn't need to be against one of their most carefully protected monsters. And speaking of wasting carefully built characters, Brock Lesnar's return embodied everything wrong with WWE's approach to nostalgia acts in 2025. When Brock Lesnar returned at SummerSlam, the pop was huge. The question, as always, is what WWE does with that momentum. And the answer in 2025 was absolutely nothing. Lesnar showed up, destroyed John Cena in a one-sided squash match, then basically vanished into the ether until War Games. This was one of Cena's final dates with the company, and WWE had him get demolished with no comeback, no angle, and no follow-up. Lesnar didn't need to be re-established as a monster. Everyone already knows what Brock Lesnar is. Squashing Cena in his retirement tour achieved nothing except wasting one of his remaining matches. If WWE wanted to do a dominant squash match, they should have given it to someone like Braun Breaker or another young star who could have used that moment. Instead, they tried to recapture the magic of SummerSlam 2014 by having Brock destroy Cena again, except this time it served no purpose whatsoever. Brock Lesnar's return was the perfect example of WWE chasing instant gratification. Get the viral moment, generate some Twitter buzz, then move on without any substance behind it. And nowhere was this lack of investment more apparent than in the women's division. The Women's Intercontinental Championship had its moments in 2025, particularly with Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria bringing credibility to the belt. But the United States Championship on SmackDown has been a total disaster. Chelsea Green winning the title was a genuinely beloved moment by fans. But then, she dropped the belt to Zelina Vega, whose reign was completely forgettable. But if Zelina's reign was bad, what WWE did to Julia was borderline criminal. She won the US title, but then simply vanished from TV for weeks without explanation. However, this pattern of squandering potential extended to the Women's World Championship scene as well. Io Sky was red hot after winning the Women's World Championship at WrestleMania 41. But then, WWE proceeded to do absolutely nothing with her for months. The Women's World Champion barely appeared on television. She wasn't given meaningful feuds. She wasn't positioned as the centerpiece of the Raw Women's division. They completely killed the legitimacy of her title reign by having her sit in catering rather than being showcased as the top star of the division. But the booking failures weren't limited to the women's divisions either. For a brief moment in early 2025, the SmackDown Tag Team division was actually cooking. But then the Wyatt Six returned, and suddenly every single team on SmackDown forgot they were supposed to be individuals with their own goals and rivalries. Everyone just turned their attention to the Wyatts and stopped being interesting characters in their own right. Meanwhile, over on Raw, the World Tag Team Championships became virtual props. What's particularly frustrating is that Triple H built his NXT reputation partially on the strength of his tag team booking. On the main roster in 2025, tag team wrestling has been treated as filler. and both divisions have suffered as a result. Speaking of suffering, the way WWE handled John Cena's character in the summer was absolutely baffling. If wasting half of John Cena's retirement tour on a directionless heel turn was bad, retconning that entire heel turn just days before SummerSlam was somehow even worse. WWE spent months building Cena as a heel, but then, right before SummerSlam, WWE just retconned the whole thing and flipped him back to being a babyface. No satisfying conclusion to the heel character arc. No dramatic moment where Cena saw the error of his ways. He just stopped being a heel one week, and everyone was supposed to pretend the previous months never happened. They treated months of television like it was meaningless, which trains fans to stop caring about anything WWE does because it might all get erased next week anyway. And while Cena's booking was frustrating, Cody Rhodes' title reign was straight up boring. Cody Rhodes finishing his story at WrestleMania 40 was one of the most satisfying moments in recent WWE history. But since then, we got one of the most underwhelming World Championship runs in recent memory. Fans can anticipate exactly what he's going to say in promos, exactly how his matches are going to play out, and exactly how he'll respond to any challenge. When a character becomes that predictable, it's impossible to stay invested. The Randy Orton storyline has been teased for what feels like an eternity at this point. Every few weeks, WWE hints that Orton might finally challenge Cody, then hesitates to pull the trigger. But speaking of pulling the trigger, WWE panicked and pulled the trigger on the Vision breakup way too early. When Seth Rollins had to go on hiatus due to injury, WWE decided to break up the Vision without any build-up. This was supposed to be a huge moment months later at a big pay-per-view. Instead, WWE played it out on a random episode of Raw for a viral moment that did nothing to elevate anyone involved in the angle. But while the Vision breakup came way too early, WWE has kept other factions together long past their expiration date. The Judgment Day has been a fixture of WWE programming for nearly 4 years. Throughout 2025, WWE has teased tension within the group approximately 7,000 times. Finn looks angry at Dominic Mysterio. It seems like something is about to happen. Then everyone calms down and we go back to square one. It's a total waste because by this point, WWE could have given a solid singles run to Finn instead of ruining his aura. But when it comes to ruining things, nothing comes close to the damage they did to John Cena's legacy with his final match. John Cena built his entire legacy on never giving up, on inspiring kids and adults all around the world to never quit. But Triple H made the same guy tap out in his final match to a sleeper hold. And you still have some Triple H bots defending this decision as poetic and cinema. The worst part is that they aren't even going to capitalize on the momentum Gunther has right now. He's probably going to be jobbing to Jey Uso or Logan Paul in just 3 months. No wonder WWE keeps pumping out slop like this when their brainwashed fans will eat up anything that's served to them at this point. But if you want to relive a time when WWE was actually good, check out this video next.